The moon was thin like a cut blade in the sky when the drums began to speak. They spoke low at first, like a warning carried by the wind across the savannah. In the village of Kisongo, people believed drums never sounded without reason. When they spoke, something old was waking. The fire in the center of the compound burned red and blue, throwing shadows on mud walls painted with ancient signs. Women stirred pots of millet. Children chased fireflies. Elders sat on carved stools, their eyes sharp even in old age. The air smelled of smoke, palm oil, and rain that had not yet fallen. Among them stood Zawadi. She stood straight like a tree that had survived many storms. Her wrapper cloth was simple, her feet bare on the earth. Her face carried quiet strength, but her eyes were tired. Those eyes had cried many nights in silence. Tonight she had been summoned. Not by the elders. Not by the spirits. But by her husband. Makori, son of the hunter Gamba, had called everyone to the compound. He stood near the fire, dressed in fine cloth brought from the far riverlands. Gold rings shone on his fingers. His smile was wide and careless, like a man who believed the world belonged to him. Beside him stood another woman. Her name was Nyara. Nyara's skin glowed with oil and pride. Beads of red and white hung around her neck. Her hair was braided high, decorated with carries that clicked softly when she moved. She leaned against Makori as if she had always belonged there. The village whispered. Zawadi felt every whisper land on her back like a stone. Makori raised his hand. The drums fell silent. "My people," he said loudly, laughing before he finished speaking. "Tonight I speak truth. A man must not hide his happiness." He pulled Nyara closer. "This woman is my joy." A sharp breath moved through the crowd. Zawadi did not move, she did not cry, she did not speak. Makori turned to her slowly, his smile grew cruel. "Zawadi," he said, "you have grown dry like old soil. You gave me no sons, no fire, no laughter. The ancestors did not bless you." Nyara laughed softly. Makori continued, "I will take Nyara as my second wife. From today she stands above you." The words cut deep, but Zawadi still said nothing. Then Nyara stepped forward. She looked Zawadi up and down, her eyes full of mockery. "You should kneel," Nyara said. "You should thank me. I will give this house children." Zawadi lifted her eyes at last. They were calm, too calm. Nyara's face twisted with anger. Without warning, Nyara raised her hand. Slap. The sound was loud, louder than the drums, louder than the fire. Zawadi's head turned to the side. Her cheek burned, the taste of blood filled her mouth. The village froze. No woman had ever dared strike another woman in public like that. Not in Kisongo, not under the eyes of the ancestors. Makori burst into laughter. He laughed so hard he bent forward, holding his stomach. Tears filled his eyes. "Did you see that?" he shouted. "Even Nyara knows her place." Some people looked away, some elders frowned, the wind shifted. Far away, thunder rolled. Zawadi slowly turned her face back toward the fire. Her cheek was red, her skin trembled, but her eyes were no longer tired. They were awake. Deep inside her chest, something old stirred. Something she had buried long ago. Her grandmother's voice. "When injustice dances openly, the ancestors do not sleep." Zawadi bowed her head. Makori mistook this for defeat. "Leave," he said, waving his hand. "Go and cry in your empty hut." Nyara smiled in victory. Zawadi turned and walked away without a word. Her feet carried her past the huts, past the laughing crowd, past the dogs curled near the fire. She walked into the darkness where the village ended and the forest began. The drums started again. Slow, heavy, uneasy. The elders exchanged looks. One elder, old Mtemi, tapped his staff on the ground. "This night is wrong," he murmured. "A woman was shamed before the ancestors." Another elder whispered, "The spirits have long memories." Zawadi did not hear them. She walked until the firelight faded, and the trees swallowed her whole. The forest of Kisongo was not a place for the weak. Tall trees stood like silent guards, roots twisted like snakes. Night birds cried warnings. The wind moved through leaves like whispers of the dead. Zawadi reached the river. The river Luma shone dark under the moon. It was said the river listened to pain. It was said the river carried messages to the ancestors. Zawadi knelt. She touched the water to her cheek. It was cold. The sting sharpened her thoughts. She looked at her reflection. Not a broken woman. Not a defeated wife. But a daughter of the land. Slowly she began to speak. Ancestors of my blood, she whispered. You saw my shame. You heard the laughter. If I have ever honoured you, if my mother's tears still speak for me, answer me tonight. The wind rose. The trees creaked. The river began to ripple, though no stone had touched it. Zawadi closed her eyes. Memories flooded her mind. Her grandmother teaching her secret songs. Her mother warning her never to forget who she was. The night she was chosen as Makori's wife under a full moon, with blessings spoken over her head. Those blessings had not died. They had only slept. The water began to glow faintly. Zawadi gasped. From the riverbank a voice spoke. Not loud, not soft, but ancient. Daughter of patience, the voice said, why do you wake us? Zawadi trembled but did not run. Because I was struck, she said, because injustice laughed. The water rose slightly, circling her feet. Revenge burns villages, the voice warned. What do you seek? Zawadi lifted her head. Not blood, she said, truth and justice. Silence followed. Then the voice said, go to the mountain before dawn. What was hidden will be revealed, what laughed will cry. The water fell still. The glow faded. Zawadi remained kneeling, her heart pounding. She did not smile. She did not cry. She stood. Behind her unseen, an owl watched from a branch. Far back in the village, Makori drank palm wine and laughed again, unaware that the earth beneath him had begun to shift. The drums changed rhythm. This time they sounded like footsteps. And the ancestors were listening. Before dawn, the village of Kisongo slept in uneasy silence. The fire pits had turned to ash. The laughter from the night before had faded, but its poison still hung in the air like smoke trapped under roof. Zawadi did not return to her hut. When the first bird cried from the fig tree, she was already walking. Her feet moved across the earth as if guided by hands older than memory. Dew kissed her ankles. The wind brushed her wrapper like a warning. The forest opened slowly, revealing narrow paths known only to hunters, herbalists and spirits. The mountain waited. The people called it Mount Ngoro. It stood dark and heavy against the pale sky, its peak wrapped in mist like a crown of secrets. Elders said no one climbed it without losing something or finding something they could never forget. Zawadi walked without fear. Each step echoed the words spoken by the river. What laughed will cry. Behind her in Kisongo, Makori woke with a dry mouth and a heavy head. He pushed Nyara's arm away and sat up. Where is that woman? He muttered. Nyara yawned and smiled, still crying, I hope. Makori laughed, but the sound did not feel sweet in his throat. Outside, the village felt strange. Dogs whined, chickens refused to leave their coops. A thin cloud covered the sun. Makori brushed the feeling away. A man who rises laughs at shadows, he said aloud. He did not notice old Mtemi watching him from across the compound, his eyes dark and unreadable. On the forest path, Zawadi felt the land change beneath her feet. The trees grew thicker, the air turned cooler, the sound of insects faded, replaced by deep silence. She heard footsteps. Zawadi stopped. Her hand moved to the small leather pouch tied at her waist. Inside it were dried roots given to her by her grandmother long ago. Show yourself, Zawadi said calmly. From behind a baobab stepped a man. He was tall, wrapped in a hunter's cloak made from animal skin. A spear rested easily in his hand. His face bore scars shaped like rivers. It was Kato, the mountain hunter. Few villagers spoke to him, fewer trusted him. You walk toward Ngoro alone, Kato said. Women do not do that without reason. I have reason, Zawadi replied. Kato studied her face, his eyes lingered on her cheek. Pain follows you, he said. So does purpose, Zawadi answered. Kato nodded slowly. The mountain does not lie, he said, but it takes payment. Zawadi met his gaze. I have already paid, she said, with silence. Kato stepped aside. Then walk, he said, but remember this, truth is heavier than anger. Zawadi continued. As she climbed, the land whispered. Leaves brushed her skin, shadows moved where no bodies stood, the smell of wet stone filled her lungs. By midday she reached a clearing. At its centre stood a stone circle, cracked and ancient. Symbols carved into the rocks glowed faintly as if remembering fire. Zawadi's breath caught. She had seen these symbols before. On her grandmother's walls. On the old drums. This was a place of calling. She stepped into the circle. The ground trembled slightly. Wind rushed in from all sides, lifting dust and leaves. The temperature dropped, her ears rang. Then she saw them. Figures formed from mist and light. Men and women with eyes like burning embers, faces both familiar and unknown. The ancestors. Zawadi fell to her knees. We hear you, they spoke as one. My husband shamed me, Zawadi said. He laughed when I was struck. The ancestors were silent. One stepped forward. An old woman with braided white hair. Makori broke the balance, she said, but balance must be restored without poison. Zawadi's hands trembled. What must I do? She asked. See, the ancestor replied, before you act. The air thickened. The world shifted. Zawadi gasped as the clearing vanished. She stood now inside a different place. Makori's childhood home. She watched unseen. Makori's father, Gamba, lay sick on a mat. A small bag of gold rested near him. A younger Makori stood nearby. A voice echoed. You swore to honor your wife, the voice said. Zawadi watched as Makori took the gold and left his father to die alone. Her heart pounded. The vision changed. Nyara knelt before a dark shrine, whispering. She poured black powder into a bowl. Make him mine, Nyara begged. Take his first wife's luck. Zawadi felt cold fear. The ancestor's voice returned. Your pain is not new, they said. It was prepared. Zawadi cried out. Back in Kisongo, the sun sank low. Makori argued with an elder. The goats refuse to eat, the elder said. This is a sign. Old men see signs everywhere, Makori snapped. Thunder rolled again. Nyara shivered. Something feels wrong, she whispered. Makori scoffed. Fear is for the weak. But when night fell, Makori dreamed. He dreamed of fire swallowing his compound. He woke screaming. Sweat soaked his skin. Nyara sat up frightened. The ancestors are angry, she said. Makori's laughter did not come. On the mountain, Zawadi stood alone again. The ancestors faded. Only one voice remained. Return, it said, your path is opening. Zawadi bowed. As she descended, the forest felt alive. Every step felt guided. Every sound felt watched. At the village edge, Kato waited. You have seen, he said. Yes, Zawadi replied. Then choose wisely, Kato said. Power without mercy destroys the holder. Zawadi looked toward Kisongo. Lights flickered. Drums beat unevenly. She touched her cheek once more. Her eyes hardened. Not with hatred. With clarity. The path to revenge had turned into a path of truth. And the village stood directly in its way. The morning sun rose slowly over Kisongo, but it brought no warmth. Its light felt pale, like a witness afraid to speak. Zawadi entered the village just as the drums began their low warning beat. People stopped what they were doing. Women froze with baskets on their heads. Children stopped running. Men turned with uneasy eyes. She did not walk like a shamed wife anymore. She walked like someone carrying a message. Her cheek was still faintly red, but her face was calm. Her back was straight. Her eyes were clear, deep and steady. Whispers followed her steps. She went to the mountain. She should be dead. No one returns the same. Zawadi went directly to the elder's ground. Old Mtemi sat there already, his staff resting across his knees. Beside him were 3 other elders, their faces serious, their breath slow and measured. They looked at Zawadi for a long time before speaking. "You stand before us changed," old Mtemi said. Zawadi bowed respectfully. "I stand before you awake," she replied. The wind stirred, dust lifted gently around the circle, then settled again. "What you seek," another elder said, "must be heavy to return from Ngoro alive." Zawadi nodded. "I seek the truth that hides under laughter," she said. Before the elders could respond, loud footsteps broke the moment. Makori arrived. He wore bright cloth and forced confidence. Nyara followed closely, her chin raised, her eyes sharp with suspicion. Makori laughed when he saw Zawadi. "You return already," he mocked. "Did the forest teach you how to cry better?" Zawadi did not look at him. She faced the elders. "I ask for the village ear," she said. "I ask for the ancestors to listen." The elders exchanged glances. Old Mtemi raised his staff. "Speak," he said. Makori scoffed. "This is foolish." Old Mtemi struck the ground with his staff. "Silence," he commanded. Makori froze. Zawadi took a slow breath. "When I was struck," she began, "it was not only my cheek that felt pain. It was the law of our people. It was the respect of women. It was the silence of truth." Nyara laughed sharply. "You were struck because you are weak," she said, "because you could not hold your husband." A murmur moved through the crowd. Zawadi turned her eyes to Nyara. "You took what was not offered," Zawadi said softly, "and you fed it poison." Nyara's smile faltered. Makori stepped forward angrily. "Enough," he shouted. "This woman speaks madness." Zawadi lifted her hand. "Then let madness speak fully," she said. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it slowly. Inside lay dark powder. The same powder Nyara had poured before the shrine. A gasp moved through the elders. Nyara's face drained of colour. "Where did you get that?" Nyara whispered. "The mountain showed me," Zawadi said, "and the ancestors remembered." The wind rose suddenly, swirling dust into the air. The drums changed rhythm, beating faster, deeper. Zawadi continued. "You went to the night shrine," she said to Nyara. "You asked for my luck to be taken. You asked for my womb to close. You asked for my husband's eyes to turn cruel." Nyara shook her head wildly. "She lies," Nyara screamed. But her voice cracked. Old Mtemi stood. "Nyara," he said, "swear before the ancestors that this is false." Nyara's lips trembled. Makori looked at her sharply. "Swear," he demanded. Nyara opened her mouth. No words came. The silence grew heavy. Then a child cried. Then thunder rolled. Nyara collapsed to her knees. "I only wanted him to choose me," she sobbed. "I did not mean to bring darkness." A wave of shock moved through the village. Makori stepped back as if struck. "You used witchcraft," he whispered. Nyara looked up at him, tears streaking her face. "You laughed when she was slapped," she said. "I wanted you to laugh only with me." Makori's face twisted. The elders spoke among themselves in low voices. Zawadi felt no joy. Only calms. But the ancestors were not finished. The air thickened again. The sky darkened though it was still morning. A low hum filled the ground. Old Mtemi's eyes widened. "The ancestors wish more truth," he said. Zawadi felt her heart beat harder. She had seen this vision already. She turned slowly toward Makori. "You abandoned your father," she said. Makori stiffened. "What nonsense is this?" he barked. "You took his gold," Zawadi continued. "You left him to die alone." A sharp cry escaped Makori. "That is a lie." The ground shook. "Not hard. Just enough." A voice echoed, not from one mouth but from the wind itself. The son failed the father. Makori fell to his knees. The village erupted in cries. Nyara covered her ears. Makori's shoulders shook. I was afraid, he sobbed. I wanted wealth, I wanted respect. Zawadi watched him. The man who laughed while she was struck now knelt in dust. The elders raised their hands. The truth stands, old Mtemi said, and truth demands judgment. Zawadi felt something stir inside her. This was the turning point. She could crush him. She could destroy everything he had built. The ancestors waited. The village waited. Makori lifted his head and looked at her. His eyes were empty. Do what you came to do, he whispered. Zawadi stepped forward. Her voice was steady. I did not come to spill blood, she said. I came to remove lies. She turned to the elders. Let justice follow the old ways, she said, not anger. The drums slowed. The wind softened. The ancestors listened. But the greatest conflict was not yet done. Because truth, once spoken, demands a price. And the price was about to be named. The village of Kisongo stood silent after the truth was revealed. Even the birds seemed afraid to sing. Makori knelt in the dust, his head bowed, his fine clothes now stained and heavy. Nyara crouched nearby, shaking, her proud beads dull against her skin. The elders rose slowly. Old Mtemi stepped forward, his staff pressing deep into the earth. Truth has been spoken, he said. Now the ancestors demand balance. A deep drum sounded once. Then again. Each beat felt like a heartbeat of the land. Makori lifted his face toward the elders. Punish me, he said hoarsely, but spare the village. Zawadi watched him carefully. This was not the man who had laughed. This was a man stripped of his mask. Nyara crawled forward. I will leave, she cried. I will go far away, just do not call the spirits. The elders did not answer her. They turned to Zawadi. You were wronged, old Mtemi said. The law gives you voice, speak your judgment. The crowd held its breath. Zawadi felt every eye on her. She remembered the sting on her cheek. The laughter. The nights of silence. She also remembered the mountain. The ancestors' warning. Power without mercy destroys the holder. She stepped into the center of the circle. I speak not as a wounded wife, she said. I speak as a daughter of Kisongo. Her voice carried across the open ground. Makori broke the law of respect, she continued. Nyara broke the law of the unseen. Makori bowed his head lower. Nyara sobbed. Zawadi lifted her hand. Nyara, she said calmly, you will leave this village before sunset. You will never return. The spirits will follow you only as far as your guilt allows. Nyara gasped. No, she cried, he promised me. Zawadi did not look at her. And Makori, she said. Makori looked up, hope and fear fighting in his eyes. You will lose what you value most, Zawadi said. Your pride, your standing, your comfort. A murmur passed through the people. You will no longer lead, she continued. You will work the land with your hands, you will eat last, you will listen more than you speak. Makori swallowed. I accept, he said. Zawadi paused. There was one last weight to place. And our marriage, she said softly, ends here. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Makori's breath caught. You leave my hut, Zawadi said, not in shame but in silence. The drums stopped. The wind moved gently. Old Mtemi nodded slowly. So it shall be, he said. The elders struck their staffs on the ground. Judgment was sealed. Nyara was taken away by two women. She screamed and cried, but the forest swallowed her voice. Makori remained kneeling. Zawadi turned away. She felt lighter. But the ancestors were not yet finished. That night the sky burned red. A strange sickness moved through the village. Goats refused water, fires died quickly, children woke screaming. Old Mtemi sent for Zawadi. She found the elders gathered around the sacred fire. The balance is not fully restored, one elder said. Old Mtemi looked at Zawadi. The ancestors demand a final act, he said. Zawadi's heart tightened. What act? She asked. Forgiveness, the elder replied. The word felt heavier than anger. Zawadi closed her eyes. Bring Makori, she said. Makori arrived barefoot, carrying a hoe. His shoulders sagged. Zawadi faced him before the fire. You laughed when I was struck, she said. Makori's eyes filled with tears. I was blind, he whispered. Zawadi reached out. Slowly. She touched the same cheek that had been slapped. Not in pain. In release. I forgive you, she said. The fire flared bright. The wind rushed through the compound. The sickness lifted. Makori broke down, weeping openly. The elders bowed their heads. Balance returned. But forgiveness did not mean return. Zawadi walked away. Toward a new path. At dawn she stood at the edge of the village, watching the sun rise over the savannah. Kato the hunter approached. You chose the harder path, he said. Zawadi nodded. Justice without mercy leaves scars, she replied. Kato smiled faintly. And mercy without strength leaves wounds, he said. Zawadi looked ahead. Her journey was not over. The climax still waited. Because revenge had transformed. And destiny was preparing its final test. The day after judgment felt calm, but calm in Kisongo was often a lie. The sun rose bright, yet its heat pressed heavy on the land. The air did not move. Even the insects were quiet, as if the world was holding its breath. Zawadi sensed it the moment she woke. Her chest felt tight. Her dreams had been filled with fire, running feet, and drums beating too fast. She stepped outside her hut and looked toward the forest. Dark clouds gathered low over the trees, though no rain fell. The ancestors are restless, she whispered. By midday, news spread through the village. Nyara had not left the forest paths. The women who escorted her returned pale and shaking. She disappeared, one said. The ground swallowed her cries. The elders gathered again. This is bad, one murmured. Old Mtemi's face was grave. When dark paths are opened, they do not close easily, he said. As night approached, the drums began again. Not the slow warning beat. Not the calling beat. This rhythm was sharp, fast, urgent. The drum of crisis. Men grabbed spears, women pulled children close. Fires were lit around the village in circles of protection. Zawadi stood near the elder's fire. Her heart pounded. Suddenly the wind screamed. The forest erupted with sound. Branches cracked, animals fled. A deep roar rolled across the land, not from any beast of flesh. The ground shook violently. From the edge of the forest, a shape emerged. Tall, twisted, wrapped in shadow. Its eyes burned red like coals. The elders gasped. A vengeful spirit, one whispered, awakened by broken magic. Nyara's doing. The spirit moved closer, dragging darkness behind it like smoke. Children screamed. Makori ran forward, falling to his knees. This is my fault, he cried, take me. The spirit turned its burning eyes toward him. The drums thundered faster. Zawadi felt the ancestors stir inside her blood. She stepped forward. No, she shouted. Her voice cut through the chaos. The spirit paused. Zawadi stood tall, fear shaking her bones but not her will. You were born from greed and pain, she said, but you will not feed on this village. The spirit laughed, a sound like rocks grinding. She called me, it growled. Her hatred opened the gate. Zawadi shook her head. Hatred did not finish this, she said. Truth did. The elders began chanting. The fire burned blue. Zawadi remembered her grandmother's words, long buried. When darkness rises, stand where pain began. She turned to Makori. Stand, she ordered. Makori rose, trembling. Face what you became, Zawadi said. The spirit lunged. Zawadi did not run. She raised her hands. I was slapped, she cried. I was laughed at, I was broken, but I did not become this. Light burst from the fire. The ancestors' voices rose like thunder. Enough, the spirit screamed. Zawadi stepped closer. Return to the earth, she commanded. Your debt is paid. Makori fell flat on his face. The spirit writhed, shrinking, screaming, until it collapsed into ash. Silence fell. The wind softened. The drums slowed. Then stopped. The village stood stunned. Old Mtemi dropped to his knees. The balance is restored, he whispered. Zawadi collapsed, exhausted. Makori crawled to her feet. You saved us, he sobbed. Zawadi looked at him gently. No, she said, I chose not to destroy. The fire faded to embers. Dawn broke slowly. Kisongo still stood. The climax had passed. But the lesson was not yet complete. Dawn came quietly to Kisongo. Not with drums, not with cries, but with soft light that touched the earth like forgiveness. The ash where the vengeful spirit had fallen lay cold and grey. No wind moved it. No bird dared land there. It was as if the land itself was remembering what had almost been lost. Zawadi lay near the elder's fire, her body heavy with exhaustion. Her breath was slow but steady. The blue flames of the night had faded, leaving only red embers glowing like tired eyes. Old Mtemi sat beside her, watching. She carries the weight well, he said softly. She carried it when no one saw, another elder replied. As the sun climbed higher, the village slowly stirred. Women stepped from their huts, men lowered their spears. Children peeked out from behind doorways. Kisongo still stood. That alone felt like a miracle. Zawadi opened her eyes. For a moment she did not remember where she was. Then she smelled ash and earth and everything returned. She sat up slowly. Makori stood several steps away, his head lowered, his hands empty. He did not speak. He did not move. Zawadi rose to her feet. The village gathered without being called. They formed a wide circle around her, respectful, silent. Old Mtemi stood and struck his staff into the ground once. The night has passed, he said. But lessons do not leave with darkness. He turned to Zawadi. You faced shame, he said. You faced truth, you faced a spirit born of hatred. Now speak so the village may remember. Zawadi stepped forward. She looked at the faces around her. Faces that had watched her be slapped. Faces that had heard laughter. Faces that now waited. When my cheek was struck, she began, many of you saw only a woman being put in her place. A few heads bowed. But the ancestors saw something else, she continued. They saw balance break. She paused, letting the words sink in. Injustice is not loud at first, she said. It laughs, it mocks, it tells you it is small, but when it is ignored it grows teeth. The elders nodded. Zawadi turned slightly and looked at Makori. He did not lift his eyes. I could have destroyed him, she said. The ancestors gave me that power. A murmur rippled through the people. But destruction feeds the same fire that creates monsters, she continued. I chose another path. She faced the crowd again. Revenge is easy, Zawadi said. Justice is hard, mercy is harder. Silence followed. Makori stepped forward slowly and dropped to his knees again. I laughed, he said, his voice breaking. I thought power meant shame for others, I was wrong. Zawadi looked at him. You lost your name before you lost your house, she said. Remember that. Makori bowed his head to the ground. I will spend my life remembering, he whispered. Old Mtemi raised his staff. Makori, he said, from this day forward you will serve the village, not rule it. You will teach young men what arrogance costs. Makori nodded without protest. The elders then turned to Zawadi. You have no husband now, one elder said. No house bound to another name, what will you do? Zawadi lifted her face toward the sky. For years I lived as a shadow, she said, quiet, enduring, waiting for kindness. She lowered her gaze. I will wait no more. She turned toward the forest. I will walk the paths of women before me, she said. I will learn the herbs, the stories, the old laws. I will speak for those who are laughed at. A hush fell over the circle. Old Mtemi's eyes softened. The ancestors have already chosen you, he said. That evening a new fire was lit. Not for fear, not for warning, but for remembrance. The elders painted new symbols on the sacred stones. Women sang old songs rarely sung. Men beat the drums slow and deep, a rhythm of healing. Zawadi sat among them, not above them. Children gathered near her. Were you afraid? One asked. Zawadi smiled gently. Yes, she said, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is standing while fear watches. Far beyond Kisongo, on a forgotten path, Nyara wandered alone. Her beads had fallen away. Her pride had turned to dust. The spirits did not follow her further. She had learned her lesson too late. Back in the village, seasons passed. Makori worked the fields under the sun. His hands grew rough, his voice grew quiet. When young men laughed cruelly, he stopped them. I once laughed, he would say, and nearly lost everything. Zawadi became something new. Not a queen, not a wife, but a voice. When disputes rose, she spoke. When women were silenced, she stood. When anger burned hot, she cooled it with truth. The forest paths opened to her, the elders listened, the ancestors whispered. Years later, old Mtemi lay dying. He called for Zawadi. You walked the hardest road, he said weakly. Tell me why. Zawadi held his hand. Because pain does not end when it is passed on, she replied. It ends when someone refuses to carry it further. Old Mtemi smiled and closed his eyes. When he was buried, the drums beat long and low. Zawadi stood beneath the same moon that had watched her humiliation. She touched her cheek. There was no pain there now. Only memories. And strength. The village of Kisongo would tell her story for generations. Not as a tale of revenge, but as a lesson. Many seasons passed after the night the spirit turned to ash, but Kisongo never returned to the village it once was. The land remembered. When rain fell, it fell gently, as if careful not to disturb old wounds. When the sun burned, it burned with purpose, ripening crops instead of scorching them. Even the forest seemed to breathe differently, no longer heavy with warning, but watchful, alive, awake. At the center of it all was Zawadi. She did not sit on a throne. She did not wear crowns or heavy beads. Yet when she walked, people stepped aside without fear, without force, without command. Respect followed her like a shadow. Each morning Zawadi rose before the sun. She walked to the river Luma where everything had begun. She washed her hands in the water, touched her forehead and whispered thanks to the ancestors, not requests, not demands, only gratitude. The river always answered with silence. But silence, she had learned, was also a voice. Zawadi's hut became a place of gathering. Women came with quiet pain in their eyes. Girls came with questions they were afraid to ask their mothers. Men came too, not to challenge her, but to listen. She taught them stories. Not stories of revenge. Stories of consequence. Stories of balance. When someone is humiliated, she would say, the earth feels it. When someone laughs at cruelty, the ancestors write it down. The children listened most closely. One evening a boy asked, did it hurt when they laughed at you? Zawadi paused before answering. Yes, she said honestly, but what hurt more was how easy it was for them. The boy frowned. That is why we must never make it easy again, she said gently. Makori watched these moments from a distance. His back bent more each year from working the fields. His hands grew cracked and hard. He no longer wore bright cloth. He no longer spoke loudly. Yet something else grew in him. Understanding. When boys mocked girls, Makori stopped them. When men boasted of power, Makori looked away. When laughter turned cruel, Makori left the circle. At night he often dreamed of the slap. Not the sound. The laughter after. That was the sound that never stopped echoing. One season, drought came. Crops failed in nearby villages. People travelled far seeking food and water. Some came to Kisongo, thin and desperate. The elders gathered. "We cannot feed everyone," one said. Old Mtemi was gone, but his teachings lived. Zawadi stood. "We were spared," she said, "not because we are special, but because we learned." The elders listened. Kisongo shared what it had. Word spread. People began to speak of Kisongo not as a village of power, but as a village of balance. And balance attracts attention. One night, strangers arrived. They came from the northern plains, warriors with scarred faces and sharp eyes. Their leader wore iron rings and spoke with confidence that tasted like threat. "We hear you are protected," he said. "We hear spirits walk with you." Zawadi met his gaze. "We are protected by our choices," she said, "not by fear." The warrior laughed. A short laugh, then stopped, because the village did not flinch. No drums rose. No spears lifted. No fear answered his challenge. Only calms. Only stillness. The warrior felt it. Power unchallenged is loud. Power rooted in truth is quiet. They left before dawn. The ancestors watched. Years later, Zawadi stood again under a thin moon, much like the one from the night everything changed. Her hair now carried strands of grey. Her face held lines not of sorrow but of living. A young woman stood beside her. "Mama Zawadi," the girl said, "why do people still tell your story?" Zawadi smiled. "So they remember," she said. "Remember what?" the girl asked. Zawadi touched her cheek gently. "That dignity is not given," she replied. "It is defended, sometimes quietly, sometimes at great cost." The drums beat softly that night. Not for danger. Not for ceremony. But for memory. Far away, Makori sat alone, watching the stars. He had never remarried, not because he was forbidden, but because he understood something too late. Love cannot grow where respect dies. He whispered into the dark, "I am sorry." The ancestors heard. They always did. And so the story did not end. It lived. In how Kisongo judged disputes. In how mothers raised daughters. In how men checked their laughter. And in the lesson carried from fire to fire, generation to generation. When injustice is mocked, darkness wakes. When truth is spoken, balance returns. And when mercy is chosen over revenge, the ancestors walk beside the living. Time moved the way it always had in Kisongo. Slow, patient, watching. Years passed like clouds over the savannah. Children grew into adults. Elders returned to the soil. New huts rose where old ones had fallen, yet one thing did not fade. The story. It lived in the drums. It lived in the firelight. It lived in the way people spoke before they laughed. Zawadi grew older, but age never bent her spirit. Her hair turned silver like moonlight on water. Her walk slowed, but her presence remained strong. When she entered a space, voices softened. When she sat, people gathered without being called. She had become something rare. A living reminder. One season, the Great Council of Villages was called. Representatives came from the Roverlands, the forests, the dry plains, and the mountains. Chiefs arrived with guards. Elders arrived with staffs carved by ancestors long gone. They gathered under a wide sky, beneath a giant baobab tree older than memory. Why had they come? Because Kasanga had changed. Conflicts ended there without blood. Women spoke there without fear. Children were raised there without cruelty. Other villages wanted to know why. An elder from the east stood. "We hear Kasanga follows a woman's law," he said carefully. Murmurs followed. Zawadi rose slowly. "I follow the land's law," she said. "It simply speaks through whoever listens." The elder frowned. "In our village," he said, "a woman was beaten for questioning her husband." The air tightened. Zawadi looked at him steadily. "And what followed?" she asked. "Nothing," the elder replied. Zawadi nodded once. That is the problem, she said. Silence fell. She stepped forward. When injustice is ignored, Zawadi said, it grows roots. Those roots crack homes, villages and bloodlines. Some elders shifted uneasily. I was struck once, she continued, and laughter followed. Whispers moved through the gathering. I could have burned everything, she said. Instead I stood. She pointed to the earth. And the earth stood with me. The wind moved through the baobab leaves. Drums began softly, though no one touched them. The ancestors were listening. A chief from the mountains spoke. What do you ask of us? He asked. Zawadi's voice was calm. Teach respect as law, she said. Not as kindness. Kindness can be withdrawn, law remains. The elders spoke among themselves for a long time. When they finished, old Safa, the eldest among them, stepped forward. We will carry this law, he said, from village to village. And so it began. The law of balance. It was spoken beside fires and carved into wood. It said, a hand raised in cruelty calls the ancestors. A laugh at injustice breaks the village shield. Truth spoken restores balance. Mercy chosen prevents darkness. Zawadi returned to Kasanga quieter than before. Her work was done. One evening she did not rise from her mat. The women knew. The elders knew. Makari knew. They gathered silently. Zawadi's breath was shallow, but her eyes were clear. Makari knelt beside her. I am sorry, he said again as he had for many years. Zawadi smiled faintly. I know, she whispered. She turned her gaze toward the fire. The ancestors are near, she said. The drums began on their own. Slow, steady, gentle. Zawadi exhaled. And did not inhale again. No scream rose. No panic followed. Only silence filled with meaning. That night the moon shone bright and full. The wind moved softly through Kasanga, touching every hut, every tree, every path. People said they felt watched. Protected. Years later children asked, was Zawadi a queen? The elders answered, no. Was she a warrior? No. Was she a spirit? The elders smiled. She was a woman who refused to become cruel. Makari lived his final years quietly. When he died, no grand ceremony followed, but on his grave someone carved simple words. He learned. The story travelled far. Across rivers. Across mountains. Across generations. It was told differently each time, but the heart remained the same. A woman was humiliated. A village laughed. The ancestors awoke. And one choice changed everything. Final moral of the story. Cruelty grows where laughter meets injustice. But when one person chooses truth over revenge, mercy over destruction, they do not just save themselves, they rewrite the law of the land.